All right, there is a very concerning trend blazing through the education society and its implication on the quality of the graduates that are churned out of higher institutions across the country are indeed alarming. Now, let me be specific. This concern is particularly the current craze for paper qualification in Nigeria.
Well, Claire, the excuse that many give for this particular demand by employers of labor is that in hiring their employees, many have said that they hear reports of fake, illegal, and forged results from higher institutions, as well as illegal National Youth Service certificates.
Well, just so that you mentioned the NYSC certificates, just this week, in fact, few days ago, the National Youth Service Corps, that's the NYSC, said it withdrew some of its certificates presented to more than 100 students from a particular university in this country. Now, NYSC says it withdrew and invalidated the certificate of 99 students illegally mobilized for national service during the 2021, 2022, and 2023 service year. Also, 2 others were illegally granted exemption certificates.
Well, NYSC's Director of Information and Public Relations, Eddie Megwa, says the students were fraudulently mobilized for the National Youth Service program by the University of Calabar. Now, these certificates qualify their owners for jobs in the country alongside their educational status. Now, recent media reports on illegal corps members in NYSC camps may not be unconnected with the reaction from the managers of the corps.
In fact, this is really, really frightening. And, further revelation indicates the extent to which some students, parents, in fact, guardians, can go to get paper qualifications for their children wards in this country. And sadly, the craze for certificates, even at the junior secondary school levels, where we see some parents helping their children, Victor, to commit exam malpractices, especially at the WAEC, NECO, and even JAM until recently. JAM took various decisive steps to forestall exam malpractices at that level. But of course, when these children, go on to get admissions into higher institutions, I mean, you cannot expect, something different. They say what you...
Indeed.
I mean, you get
train
what...
a child the way it should go, it won't depart from it, really. And many have expressed, worry regarding this development, because it also raises many questions about values, ethics, and the price people are willing to pay for a job at the expense of skill. Now, who is to be held responsible for this? Is it the system, the parents, the society, or the student?
Well, I don't think we should even be
apportioning
blame, because it's a collective malaise. Yes, everyone has a role to play in the upbringing of our children, but hopefully polytechnic and monotechnic graduates may not surrender to that temptation of taking shortcuts, especially now that the NYSC is demanding industrial training certification for all higher national diploma graduates that are seeking national service applications. But there is also a lot to talk about today on this issue, and we've tried to get the various institutions, that should play a part in all of this to be here on our program this morning, and hopefully we'll be, getting responses from them to some of the issues that we will take up shortly. Once again, just to remind you that we're looking at the craze for certificates in Nigeria. Paper qualification or job experience. I don't know. the two of them.
They can go hand in hand. They can
yes,
coexist.
Yes, in philosophy they say theory without practice is empty, or the other way around, and practice without theory is blind. So you see, they go together, just like the two hands, wash each other. So, but let me welcome you once again to Good Morning Nigeria. Today is Thursday, and we're glad to have you with us. I am Claire Adelabu Abdulrazak.
Well, I am Victor. As well, let me also welcome you to today's program. It is a beautiful Thursday in Nigeria's capital city, Abuja, and we are reaching you on the network service of the NTA. We do hope that Chukwudi Okoli Obaja will join us later on, as always, for the newspaper review. But that will be after the news with Dennis Adegunloye, who is chuckling. Is he chuckling or smiling? Good morning, Dennis.
I'm feeling a lot better than yesterday. Victor, good morning. And good morning, Claire. Good morning, Nigeria. This is the morning news. President Tinubu has begun his 3-day visit to Equatorial Guinea. He was received on arrival in Malabo by the country's first female Prime Minister, Manuela Roca Bote. Later, the president met his host president, Teodoro Obiang Nguema, at the country's presidential palace called the People's Palace. While in Equatorial Guinea, the president is expected to hold strategic meetings, particularly on oil and gas and security. The federal government has assured development partners that the Tinubu administration will fully support initiatives aimed at alleviating the suffering of persons displaced by conflict and natural disasters within and outside Nigeria's borders. Vice President Kashim Shettima gave the assurance when he received a delegation from the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, led by its Assistant High Commissioner for Operations, Rauf Mazu, during a courtesy visit at the presidential villa. The Nigeria Customs Service has released the list of foods to be imported with zero tariff and taxes into the country provided by the Ministry of Finance. This is in response to the presidential directive on suspension of tariffs and taxes on essential food imports. A statement by the Public Relations Officer of the service lists husked brown rice, grain, sorghum, millet, maize, wheat and beans, which previously had tariff rates of 30%, 5%, 5%, 5%, 20% and 20% respectively, as the items that will be imported with 0% tariff. The Federal Ministry of Finance will provide customs with a list of importers and their approved quotas periodically to facilitate the importation of these basic food items within the framework of the policy. Penalties will equally be applied to any company that exports these items in their original or processed forms, saying the policy is effective from 15th July 2024 and will remain in force until 31st December 2024. The World Health Organization's WHO Director General Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus has determined that the upsurge of mpox in the Democratic Republic of Congo and a growing number of countries in Africa constitutes a public health emergency of international concern under the International Health Regulations 2005. Dr. Ghebreyesus declared this on the advice of an International Health Regulations Emergency Committee of independent experts who met Wednesday to review data presented by experts from the WHO and affected countries. The committee informed the Director General that it considers the upsurge of mpox to be a potential threat and spread further across the countries in Africa and possibly outside the continent. He said the emergence of a new clade of mpox, its rapid spread is in eastern DRC, and the reporting of cases in several neighboring countries are very worrying. Voters in Edo and Ondo states are advised to come out and vote as security agencies will provide a peaceful environment. Director of Internal Security, Office of the National Security Advisor, Hassan Abdullahi, gave the assurance at the Interagency Consultative Committee meeting on election security at the INEC headquarters in Abuja. While expressing concern over negative comments by candidates, especially in Edo State, INEC Chairman Professor Mahmood Yakubu urges security agencies to up their operations and deal squarely with anyone instigating electoral violence. The Edo governorship election comes up on September 21st, while Ondo is slated for November. Speaker of the House of Representatives, Tajuddin Abbas, has withdrawn the counter-subversion bill and related draft legislation from consideration by the Green Chamber. The bill, initially sponsored by the Speaker, sought to criminalize the destruction of national symbols and prescribe penalties for illegal actions that threaten national security. The withdrawn counter-subversion bill, which passed the first reading at the House on July 23rd, has been subjected to criticism and controversy in the media space. This led the Speaker to issue an initial clarification that the bill was not targeting any group or section of the country. Consequently, in response to those voices and concerns of the citizens, Speaker Abbas says he has decided to withdraw the bill following extensive consultations with a broad range of stakeholders and a careful consideration of the nation's current circumstances. The Speaker, while acknowledging the significance of the concerns raised about the bill, reaffirms that he will never support any action that might disrupt the peace and unity of the nation, and that withdrawing the controversial bill reflects his commitment to ensuring that the House of Representatives remains truly the people's house. Well, that's the news update at this time. Good Morning Nigeria continues after this break with Claire and Victor. Good morning.
We are working to complete a heritage project critical to our economic prosperity, including roads, bridges, railways, power and oil and gas development. Notably, the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway and Sokoto-Badagry Highway projects will open up 16 connecting states, creating thousands of jobs and boosting economic output through trade, tourism, and cultural integration. Our once declining oil and gas industry is experiencing a resurgence on the back of the reforms I announced in May 2024 to address the gaps in the Petroleum Industry Act. Last month, we increased our oil production to 1.61 million barrels per day, and our gas assets are receiving the attention they deserve. Investors are coming back, and we have already seen 2 foreign direct investments signed, over $500 million since then.
The new Milo 3-in-1 Milky and Creamy is truly milky and contains calcium. No need to add milk for that rich, creamy cup, which helps to nourish and energize your kids.
Milo!
Bye, Mom.
He's going to play in this weather? Why did you let him go? He might fall ill.
And if he doesn't go out for practice, how will he win more trophies? To protect our family from illness-causing germs during the rainy season, we use Dettol soap every day.
Dettol with germ defense gives you protection. Rainy season brings a lot of germs, and Dettol soap's germ defense protects you from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Dettol soap is endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association. Be Dettol sure.
A new edition of TV Guide is out.
This time, we got up close and personal with the transformational legislator, the Deputy President of the Senate, distinguished Senator Barrow Jibrin.
It created a difference in terms of representation through interventions that have brought an unprecedented infrastructural development to my area.
This edition is a compendium of mind-blowing stories for your reading pleasure, ranging from technology, entertainment, economy, media, politics, family, and lots more.
It is indeed a park of excitement as we take you through every aspect of life. Pick up your copy and get abreast with issues and trending features within our space.
TV Guide, very incisive, very educative and compelling. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or any NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
Did you know that President Bola Tinubu has approved the suspension of import duties and tariffs on rice, maize and other essential food items for the next 5 months? The President has also approved the suspension of import duties on pharmaceutical raw materials and equipment. This will help bring down the prices of food and drugs across the country. All hands are on deck to ensure that things get better for all Nigerians. This is the renewed hope.
From the Atlantic across the savannah to the Sahara, we rise, a land of the free, we know they tire. We dream great, our spirit is undying.
Resilient, rooted like palm tree, we sway in colors, with undying demand. We bet solutions, we ignite passion, yeah. Each ethnicity is unique, we have more than just a nation. We are Nigeria, strengthening unity, we know they carry lives. We are Nigeria, together live the dream of a land with great destiny. We are Nigeria.
I am the real Nigerian. Brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA.
Welcome back to the program, and you're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service. And coming up next will be newspaper review with Chukwuju Kolubuaja. Then go away.
Right. It's Good Morning Nigeria, and of course, it's time for newspaper review. Chukwuju Kolubuaja is well seated and ready to do the do.
How are you doing, Victor?
Good morning.
Good morning. Claire.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
It's a clear morning, and I know that Claire will be happy about it.
And you look clear this morning.
Yes.
Crystal clear this morning.
I had a
clean
haircut.
shaven.
I had a haircut.
Yes.
I look crisp.
You look boy.
Right from the mint. But don't spend me.
Okay, let's say you have two papers.
All right, let me begin here with the New Telegraph. And it leads with the headline, ACF to FG, don't ignore reasons for hardship protests. And that story can be found on pages 2, 10, 17, 18, and 26. It has riders though. Once it will be grave mistake. Hoodlums stole Ganduje's corruption case documents from court. That's according to Kano governor. Interesting. Manufacturers recorded high inventory of unsold goods during protests. Tinubu should re-examine his economic reform policies. That's according to Getso. And Council of State's confidence vote in Tinubu improper. That's credited to Professor Denta. And still below the masthead of the New Telegraph. Abbas bows to pressure, withdraws counter-subversion bill, says bill targeted at terrorists, bandits, militias, page 3. My monthly take-home, over 21 million naira, Senator Kawu. Don't give him the Ningi Ndume treatment, Atiku tells Akpabio. And then Fubara, we are now in governance with Rivers people, not politics. Swears in 5 commissioners, 2 special advisors, page 28. And victory for Murtala Mohammed's family as NAS approves a victims' rights bill. That story is on page 6. And this one Several stories here, too many, but let's take this one. Finland to FG, we are taking actions on Simon Ekpa's case. Issue central topic in discussions with Valtonen. That's according to Foreign Affairs Minister Tuga, and the story is on page 3. Like I said, there are many other stories, but we just have to leave it here from the New Telegraph and go to the leadership, which leads with the major headline. Amid food inflation, Nigeria risks generation of children with low IQ. That story is on page 4, and there's a diagram to illustrate what that story is talking about. And above that story, NSA warns against attempts to disrupt Edo-Ondo elections. Also above that and below the nameplate, economic activities dropped for 13th month in July. That's according to CBN. And above the masthead, I have no apologies for criticizing FG's policies. That's according to Bauchi governor. And on page 6, protesters took away Ganduje trial documents, Kanu government. That's, like I said, on page 6, Claire.
Okay, I think all the stories that you have read from the papers are also here, but just to read out the headline story from the blueprint. To arrest hunger, federal government rules out guidelines on zero duty for food items. And I think this story is running through all the papers, and it's also one of our headline stories. And there's also this one that's been, of course, everywhere since yesterday. My monthly take-home is 21 million naira, says Senator Cow. That's about all that is here. That's quite different from what Victor has. I think Chukwudi can now choose the boy.
Yeah, quickly. Ganduje's corruption case paper stolen in court. And you say, really? Let them
it's quite interesting.
Let them erect a case again. It's not mission
impossible. Is that
the
only copy?
Well, these must be very well-informed hoodlums. They definitely were not hungry. They had an agenda. Yeah. I like this, you know. I get 21 million naira monthly as take-home pay. That's Senator Sumaila Kau representing Kano South. It seems that the veil has finally been lifted, you know. I think that Senator Shehu Sani at a point also mentioned take-home way back. I remember.
Yes, about 13 point something million.
Exactly. But this man says he takes some 21 million naira monthly.
But he gave has to be made that this is probably salary.
Exactly, yeah.
No.
Actually, the Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission had 24 hours earlier given 1.06 million naira as salary and allowances, you know.
No, I think there was a point where that was clarified.
Yes. No, there's always a clarification.
Yes, because I think he said take home 600,000. Then there are other allowances, you know, that of course increased what the take home pay.
Exactly.
Yes. So let's not mix.
No. I never ever considered that the salaries of our lawmakers is a big deal. What I have never liked is the seeming secrecy about it. It's not a cult arrangement. Let them explain what the monies are for. The people could say, oh, for crying out loud, the kind of...
Yes, because...
If you ask me, the kind of pilgrimage that a lawmaker experiences when they travel to their constituents, you know, from time to time, does it not justify, you know, they're having something to give to those people?
No, I think
it's our culture, really.
I think
if we are going to stop the humongous salaries, we are going to also stop the attitude of thinking that when they get there, it's opportunity for us to get our share of the national cake.
Chukwudi, you're absolutely right. But I also think that the issue that is being raised is the fact that the pegs, you know,
self-awarded.
Exactly.
That is the point. That is the point. So, our dear lawmakers, in the face of hunger in the land, 21 million naira monthly, do you really consider that is very, very correct? Right. That is the question. We are not
because
challenging
when,
you.
when you consider the amount pegged for newspaper, purchase of newspaper,
Which is different.
stationery.
That's entirely out of this.
Yes. So
All those are
let's
entirely out of that.
let's
Yes,
just have a
so-
heart in this circumstance.
Just
that is my
just it,
own,
yes.
you know.
Yes. Which other story
Then
do
the
you have?
ACF is asking the federal government not to gloss over the reasons for the, you know, the hunger protest that ended a week ago. And I think it's advice issued in good time. But I want to think also that the federal government doesn't even need that advice. They should know that there was indeed trouble in the land. There is still trouble in the land, but the good intentions packed into solving the trouble in the land is what should matter to us at this moment. So I don't think they're going to lose sight of the fact that Nigerians were quite irate on the streets, you know, for that period of time. So the ACF...
You know, now that you've gone back to the Nigerians, you know,
Yes.
the streets, again, something just occurred to me about the protesters, you know, what the governor said about the protesters, you know, making away with the documents on
the Ganduje case.
Yes, and I'm saying, so those protesters specifically targeted the case. How are they aware?
You know,
if you look at the caliber, I mean,
Those are proper hoodlums, not foodlums.
They were not hoodlums. They were the real hoodlums.
Where did they enter? Where did they get the documents?
Claire, you will have opportunity for a full interview on the matter. But let's not go speculating. We know we've always endeavored to be wonderful journalists.
We are just looking at, you see, when you put out information, you understand, in the public domain.
It gets us be.
Yes, you must be very thorough with your information.
Please.
So that it
Let
doesn't
them
give room.
investigate properly.
You
But
know,
the
it
point
doesn't give room
is,
for
the
different,
case can be re-erected. It's not mission impossible. As we said
did he need to? Did he need to put it
That's
out
not the only copy. I'm not. You don't make a single copy.
In this digital age, really, apart from hard copy, shouldn't you have also digital
because you printed
version?
From somewhere.
You know, you get to get so many things there. Look, soldiers are being deployed to northwest and north central farms to ensure that food security is less threatened. You know, so we can have a bumper harvest. I think it's a very good one. Because I keep saying, you know, Nigerians have this feeling that without Niger Delta oil, this country is nothing, blah, 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 blah. The reason there is hunger in the land is that the center of food cannot perform effectively because of insurgency. We're feeling it now. It shows you every segment of this country is very important. So let the soldiers please be vigilant around the farms there, because I don't want Claire to go hungry. I wouldn't want that for even my enemy, let alone you.
Well, you know what to do if you don't want me to go hungry. Check with it.
But have you noticed that the rains ceased for almost 1 month?
Yes,
August break started from around July 18. There's been just one rain since then.
Yes, I read somewhere.
Yes.
Funny that you mentioned it. I read somewhere that NIMET is saying that the August break, you know, usually we normally have the August break, that the August break may, you know, last even longer than usual, but that the length of the rains would also, you know, be longer.
Exactly.
Yes.
I just said to some people in the car this morning that those who rush to plant beans within the next 1 week may, at the end of the day, have foliage, greenish things all over the place without flowers coming out, and of course the beans not growing well, because there will be heavy rain and there's going to be elongation. I'm not going to plant beans till after 2 or 3 weeks.
Yes, because they said it will last till November,
Yes.
but the information would have to be out there for farmers, you understand, to understand and take advantage of it.
I didn't hear them, but I've been watching the weather. You know, I'm a farmer's son.
You know, so I think it's very important, again,
Very important.
yes, that this kind of information is out there, and, you know,
Victor
yes,
is looking
since
at
we're
me as
looking
if I'm
at
something that dropped from the moon. He's
you
never
know.
been to the farm.
Yes,
I'm just thinking about how to thank you for your time on the program.
throw me out,
just
as
so
usual.
that we can take a break.
Good riddance
and
to
then,
bad rubbish. I
return
get the story.
To talk about
you're not
the price for certificates.
Come on, our diabolical sense of humor in the news.
We'll see you after the break.
Always. Oh my God.
All right, let's quickly take a break, and when we come back, we'll begin our conversation on, of course, ethics versus employment.
As the president of this country, I must ensure public order in line with the constitutional oath to protect the lives and property of every citizen. Our government will not stand idly by and allow a few with a clear political agenda to tear this nation apart. Under the circumstances, I hereby enjoin protesters and the organizers to suspend any further protest and create room for dialogue, which I have always acceded to at the slightest opportunity. Nigeria requires all hands on deck and need us all, regardless of age, party, tribe, religion, or other divides, to work together, reshaping our destiny as a nation. To those who have taken undue advantage of this situation to threaten any section of this country, be warned. The law will catch up with you. There is no place for ethnic bigotry or such threats in the Nigeria we seek to build.
The new Milo 3-in-1 Milky and Creamy is truly milky and contains calcium. No need to add milk for that rich, creamy cup, which helps to nourish and energize your kids.
Relief is coming. More wages, reduced costs. Nigeria's national minimum wage is now 70,000 naira, and it will be reviewed every 3 years. The federal government will commence immediate implementation, and state governments are being encouraged to follow suit. With the presidential CNG initiative, transport costs are coming down. Are you a car owner or a transporter? Visit www.pci.gov.ng to find out how you can benefit from switching to CNG. This is the renewed hope.
NTA Television College Jos, with a pedigree of producing indelible professionals in the media space and an affiliate of the prestigious Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, for the award of degree in mass communication, calls on prospective candidates to leverage on the following courses it offers for 2024-2025 academic session. BSc Mass Communication, those with minimum admissible score of 180 and above who sat for the 2024 JAM/UTME and direct entry, while 100 to 179 minimum admissible score can apply for the National Innovation Diploma NID in Film and Television Production, Broadcast Journalism and Television Engineering. For more inquiries, visit our website or call 0803 383 4343. Announcer, Registrar.
Join body with your football buddy GoTV for correct goals and action. Ha! Sharply reconnect on top GoTV Max with 7,200 naira to torchlight La Liga, Serie A, Europa, and select Premier League games live on top Super Sport. GoTV, love it.
All right, thanks for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria. To get us in the mood for this conversation, let's take the background report by Ibrahim Dan Hamidi.
In the pursuit of employment, many Nigerians face a daunting dilemma. Prioritize ethical standards or compromise to secure a job. The certificate conundrum has become a pressing issue, as the demand for paper qualifications often overshadows the importance of skills, experience, and character. Certificates serve as a benchmark for expertise and knowledge, providing employers with a measure of assurance. However, the emphasis on certifications has led to a proliferation of fake degrees. diplomas, and academic fraud. This undermines the value of genuine qualifications and creates an unfair advantage for those willing to cheat. Moreover, the pressure to secure certificates can lead to unethical behavior, such as bribery, plagiarism, and exam malpractice. This not only erodes the integrity of the education system, but also perpetrates a culture of dishonesty. On the other hand, employers must balance the need for qualified candidates with the importance of ethical standards. Relying solely on certificates can overlook essential skills like critical thinking, creativity, and problem solving. It is crucial to strike a balance between academic qualifications and practical experience. Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will discuss the certificate conundrum and how institutions must prioritize ethical education practices and employers adopting holistic employment approaches by valuing skills, experience, and character alongside certifications in the pursuit of integrity.
All right, now that you've listened to our background report, let's get started with our introductions. And again, we're looking at the craze for certificates and, of course, employment. And we have right here with us in the studio, we have Dr. Philip John Hayab, and he's an educationist and a friend of the NTA. Thank you very much, Dr. Hayab, for joining us.
Good morning, Nigerians, and thank you for having me.
All right.
Also joining us from Makurdi is Professor Yakubu Aboki Ochefu, and he's Secretary General, Committee of Vice Chancellors of Nigerian Universities and Secretary General, Committee of Pro-Chancellors of Nigerian Federal Universities. Again, he's joining us from Makurdi. Thank you very much, Professor Ochefu. Good to see you once again.
Thank you very much. Good to see you too. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, and joining us via Zoom is Professor Hakeem Ibikunle Tijani, a visiting professor at the National Open University of Nigeria and a professor of history and executive director of the Office of Global Partnerships, Africa at Morgan State University. I'm told that he will join us shortly. And finally, let me introduce also joining us via Zoom, Professor Wahab Egbole, Vice Chancellor, University of Ilorin. It's a pleasure to welcome you, Prof, to the program.
So very much. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right, we thank everyone that's been able to join us for this very important conversation. And I like to start by, collecting. There was a time when I had to engage, one of my bosses at over an incident like this. Someone had applied for a job, but unfortunately, he didn't, possess the requisite, papers, but he had enough experience. And he was denied, the space because he didn't have the qualification. I had to, come in to put up an argument, conversation with my supervisor to really determine, what exactly are you looking out for? Is it the paper or the experience? And let me start with you, Dr. Hayab. I'm just wondering, where do you place each of them? Let us look at, the certificate and the experience. Can you put them in context?
Certification is an important aspect. I think where the problem is that sometimes we tend to emphasize. People should have requisite qualification, and this requisite qualification will now be merged or supported by the skills. That's why in certification during graduation, you would see that it is said you have been, you are certified in character and learning. Now, character is these skills this knowledge that you have built, and then in the learning is what you are certificated for. But the problem is you could have experience without certificate. We expect that people could have experience without certificate, but it is out of context. It is not proper to have certificate without the skills.
Yes, because
that is where our education system has a problem. How do you say you have this qualification and then you do not have the requisite skill which justify this certificate? One of the challenges we have these days with most of the cases in primary education, basic education generally in Nigeria, is that the learners do not demonstrate the requisite skill of the level of their learning. In primary one, in those days, we didn't have, for me, I schooled in the village, I didn't go to any creche. We were expected that by the end of primary one, we would have been able to master the alphabets and the letters, and were able to form words, at least of 3 letters, boy, and then we go up. Now, in the primary school, most public schools in Nigeria, kids who are in primary 3 are not able to master the alphabet, not to talk about the sounds and to talk about any formation of words. If they were to leave school, we could say that they've been certified, they've attended primary 1 to 3, primaries 1 to 3. But the skill that they need to demonstrate, they do not have it. So this is where our problem is. Many of us do not have, unfortunately, the requisite skills. That is why certification becomes a big deal. You go to places, you meet people, and the first thing they want to tell you is that I have a PhD. But that is not a subject of discussion at that moment in time. But if somebody really demonstrates the requisite skills of a person who is learned, those people do not need to tell you about their certificates. So naturally, when you meet people out there, they just tell you, I am Philip. Now, once you get talking, the things you are bringing out, the ideas you are bringing out, the person will start to wonder, what kind of educational level would Philip have attained? That is the way it should be, not us flying certificates. Certificates do not impact society. It is what we do, and that is the skill that impacts society. Unfortunately, we have actually modeled this too. We tend to pay more attention on certification. Certification, to my mind, does not automatically make somebody demonstrate any skills. It is skills that should come along with certificate. But in this case, we go only with the certificate, unfortunately, and then we leave the skills. And it is skills that we need to move from one point to the next. Once we don't do that, we don't work on that, we will continue to have people with certificates, but we're unable to deliver anything.
All right, Dr. Hayab, thank you very much for your opening remarks. Let's quickly get to Makurdi, where Professor Chefu has joined us. He's Secretary General of the Committee of Vice Chancellors of Nigerian University. Professor Chefu, I'd like to ask, you've listened to Dr. Hayab, and I'm wondering, how did we get here? Because elsewhere, you are likely to hear that, you're unlikely to see that if an individual presents a certificate, that you are unable to hold them accountable for what the certificate specifies. But here we have this conundrum just because there are many people brandishing certificates and they are unable to justify how they earned these certificates. And on the other hand, because certificates are in demand, many people go to the moon and anyhow they could get it just to get it. Yet I do understand that there has to be a basis for assessment. So how did we get here and how do we get out of it?
We got here through mistakes that were made in the nature and character of our educational system that goes back nearly 40 years. We got here because our curriculum at some point did not draw the line between skills-based learning, and knowledge-based learning. Because as society developed in other parts of the world over time, the nexus between knowledge and skills became very clear to educational developers. And so they had to draw a line to say, okay, how much knowledge do we require and what are the skill sets that will be part of that knowledge to do perform a particular task or activity. Now, there are two sides to it. What is the job specification? If you are looking for an engineer, a pupil engineer in the ministry, what does the law say the engineer must possess? Academic qualification in terms of skills qualification. And at the level of the academic qualification, what does the curriculum say? What is he required to possess? How is he tested? How is he trained? How is he taught? What type of laboratory work that he does? So all of those things are part of producing the person who is going to hold that certificate at the end of the day. So when you now flip that requirement in terms of the curriculum, the nature and character of the curriculum, and the way he's trained, and the person that trained him, you'll now begin to understand why some people come out of educational establishments are not properly trained, not properly taught, and don't possess the skills that is required for the job. Now, when it comes to the interview, how is he tested for this job that is required? And the testing mechanism doesn't actually test his skills. It might test his knowledge. Okay, go and you have 10,000 people applying, go and do what they call it, aptitude tests. And the aptitude test, the questions they ask are largely similar. So you go and cram and get a good result in the aptitude test, and then the process of post-aptitude test now becomes politicized. So you have people who end up in the system that don't possess the requisite skills and knowledge to do the task that is set out for them. And in some cases, the specification of the tasks, do not emphasize that are required for you to do a particular job. And so it is the certificate that they look at. And over time, like I said, this thing dates back over 40 years ago. And over time, it got worse and worse and worse to have a situation where you have a lot of people brandishing. Because if you remember, in those days, if you were going to the Polytechnic and College of Education, it was more of activity and action-based learning, skills-based learning, because you were targeting a particular type of job. If you are going to the university, it was also cleared out on what is required. But our curriculum did not change for a very long time to blend the two scenarios like I've mentioned. And so we ended up focusing on the certificate aspect and not the skills aspect. And once the entire educational system was structured in that manner, and the people who were hiring were now structured in that manner, it became clear that certificates were more important than the skills. And that is why many professional bodies now started introducing professional certification schemes. Once you finish from the University of Polytechnic and you want to practice, they go and train you in a particular way. If you want to go and work in the bank, you go to the bank, set up their own training institutes. These are all attempts to bring out the skills aspect of the job that you are supposed to do, rather than the knowledge aspect of the job that you are supposed to do. So you have a BA in Yoruba, fine, but if you want to work in a bank, these are the skill sets that you require, and once you pass those rigorous testing mechanisms, you get a license to now practice as a banker. If you want to be an engineer, you go through the professional certification. You want to be a lawyer, you go through the professional certification and things like that. Whereas in other parts of the world, these professional aspects of the certification and skills-based learning are already embedded in the curriculum. So it wasn't until about 7 years ago that we now, at the level of the universities, the polytechnics have also done their own, and I think the College of Education have done their own, or in the process of doing their own, to like say, look, let us revisit our curriculum and bring out those elements that are now consistent with 21st century education that emphasizes skills, character, competence, as well as knowledge in a holistic setup to drive the same process. So we're in a transition. It's going to take a while to build that complete structure and repair the damage that we have done to our system in the past 40 years, like I've mentioned. Thank you.
Right, Professor Chefu, thank you. I like that you were quick to acknowledge that we're in a transition and that we're also 40 years. I mean, a 40-year-old man, we know at what stage, of development a 40-year-old man would have been. But thank you for pointing out the fact that there is a gap, between skills and knowledge, based learning in our system. Let me also bring in Professor Wahab Egbewale, who is the VC of University of Ilorin, and he's joining us via Zoom. Prof, good to see you. Thank you for joining us. If I recall, it was Immanuel Kant, that's the German philosopher. And I remember in those days, our lecturers used to ring it in our ears that, see, theory without practice is blind, and practice without theory is empty, of course, which means that there's an interrelationship. There is a nexus between both sides. And for us to achieve the desired content, the desired output in terms of education, quality of education, both must go together. Now, we've been able to identify that there is a gap between learning skills and knowledge learning. But can you identify in content and in context those gaps within our educational system?
Thank you so very much. We must appreciate the fact that in identifying the gaps between learning and practice, we must be mindful of the fact that our educational system cannot be an island unto itself. It is a function of the society we live in. And to that extent, we must also contextualize the fact that we are looking at education in isolation of the Nigerian societal malaise. Having said that, these gaps exist because of what the earlier speakers have identified, that our curriculum is deficient. And these gaps will continue to exist if we over-rely on what you present as against what you can do. From us as a people, I think it is important for there to be what we can call a stakeholders meeting to come into terms with why were these gaps there in the first place? 2, what do we need to do to bridge the gaps? As a manager of an institution, you discover that there is this disconnect between the level of and the position of the facilitators. Therefore, if we are talking about the gap, we must first try to create a synergy between the learners and the facilitators. For them, because it's just like the way we go about everything in Nigeria. We want solution to this, we want solution to that. But we must first identify what the problem is before we profile solution. So, in essence, if we want to get out of this conundrum that we are presently in, there must be that link between the facilitators and the learners. Two, the facilitators must also appreciate the fact that there is a gap even in the facilitator itself, in him or herself, to be able to fill the gap in our system and as well impact that bridge into the learners. As far as we are concerned as administrators, we have come up with a number of innovations in terms of there is no, because like Dr. Ayab said, we overemphasize your presentation in terms of documentation as against your worth as a human being. I recall in 2007, and I met a colleague of mine.
Using Professor Gbewole there. Well, I guess we'll have to get back to Professor Gbewole, and he was really making some points that we needed to take, on board. However, let me get back to Dr. Hayab here. Now, for all of you that have contributed, you are talking about the emphasis on paper qualifications, and I dare say in a place like civil service, just brandish qualification, and then the training begins. Whether you are going to be an administrative staff, you are going to be a marketing staff, you are going to be anything, you just start. So it all begins there. But let me quote the American essayist, Ralph Waldo Emerson, who said, if a man can write a better book, preach a better sermon, or even make a better mousetrap than his neighbor, even if he lives in the woods, the world will make a beaten footpath to his doorstep, right? Where do we begin? And this is what obtains in more civilized, more developed countries, where you are tested, nobody really cares. And those who travel out of the country will tell you that if you like come with 20 years experience and 25, it doesn't matter. It's almost like a begin again situation. It is what you are able to do, the practicality of what you are able to do that matters. But like I said earlier, there must be a basis for assessment, right? So what will that basis be? Getting out of the institution. How do you assess people to ensure that the graduates that you are churning out are not only able to present certificates, but are able to deliver on the certificates that they present?
Yeah, so one of the things is that there is less attention to excellence. And when we talk about excellence, we're talking about someone demonstrating. Excellence doesn't come from a certificate. It comes from the ability of a person to demonstrate certain skills that prove that this person is capable of doing what they are required to do. Now, because there is compromise in terms of excellence, that is why we have had people come into a job using the certificate. But if it was going to be based on excellence, it will be that the qualified, that is the person who is able to demonstrate these skills, is the one who gets in, irrespective of where he or she comes from, irrespective of the faith, irrespective of parentage. Now, this is not the case in most situations. People get into jobs because they either have somebody in the system and this person says, oh, this person is qualified, but there is no test. An evidence-based test is what we should be focusing on. So let's say when Soludo was the CBN governor, there was the time many young people who came with first class from their universities or second class upper got into the banking sector. And for me, I knew so many of my mates that were attended university who ended up in the banking sector who had not imagined that they were going to work in the banking sector. They were tested on the evidence-based system that the banks at that time had developed. And when they proved these skills, they were trainable. Yes, because to go to the university is to change your mindset. It's just for you to have this universal idea. That's where the word university comes from. So we go to the university not necessarily to train on a particular subject area so that we come out and work in that subject area. Yes, for me, I didn't even train as a teacher. I went to study English and then I became a teacher. I got trained in the course of my work and I acquired the other additional skills. But for the language, I had to prove at the beginning that I had the command of the language. Imagine that you are a graduate, a person is a graduate of English, and you ask them to make a sentence, and they can make a correct sentence. And yet, they will get employed into your place. I have seen a reporter on the NTA who was unable to actually master the tenses. And when we are talking about discussion in English language, we're talking about NAM, we're talking about concord. That is the agreement between subject and verb, and we're talking about tenses. Once you take out this, you don't have the language. And now this person, how did he end up a reporter on a national TV? It's because excellence was compromised. So if we are going to restart, going back to Professor Chefu that he said we should, we're in transition, the transition should start where, in this country, it is the person who can do this work that gets it, irrespective of where they come from. Yes, you are required to present a certificate. So if I'm going to employ a teacher, for instance, at a secondary school or primary school, I will definitely prefer a graduate of College of Education or a graduate of university from the Faculty of Education. But then that is not enough that they come and say, I attended this college or that university. They must prove to me that they possess the requisite skill to be able to teach at the level that we require them to work. That was how we came about the reforms in the education sector, basic education, where we now have early childhood education. Before, we didn't even have teachers who were prepared to teach at that level. Now, so now we have these teachers, but do they possess the requisite skill? Can they teach at that level? Or now going back to the last speakers, he was talking about the synergy between the facilitator and the learners. With all fairness, most learners come to our institutions with no interest at all of learning any new ideas. Their interest is to get a certificate. That's why at the point of graduation, as it is called, I used to say this when I was at the College of Education in Gidanwa, that when the churches or the Muslim groups will be organizing Thanksgiving for the learners who have finished and they are going home, they call it graduation. And I asked them, who brought you to this school? We are the ones who gave you admission to come and study. How can the mosque or the church graduate you? It's not possible. We will have to graduate you. We've not marked their scripts. And then they are telling the world that they've graduated. Because it is just a period that they are counting. I've stayed in this institution for 3 years. Let me go home. But what am I going home with? So this is where the problem is. We have to get back to the point where excellence is not compromised at all.
But you talked about, I'm sorry, Clay. You talked about trainability along the line. And I'm wondering, can a philosopher turned broadcaster like me have been trained in medicine, for instance, just because I have some, general skills, I am trainable? Could I have been trained in medicine after graduating?
It is possible. There are certain fields that you cannot leave somewhere to go. Like you can't become a medical doctor. I haven't studied philosophy, English, or any, because that is actually a professional field that you require the basic training. But for other jobs, particularly in the liberal arts, once you read, I didn't train as a historian, but now I can talk about the history of the Middle Belt because I have read it.
Yeah.
But I needed to have the basic skills. At the Ahmadu Bello University area that I attended as a student of English, For any novel that I read, I was required to read the history of the moment, that novel reflects.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
I read about the Great Trek in South Africa, just reading from a novel called Moody. I had to read about Zolikazi. I had to read about Zulu. So when I got to South Africa as a student, when I talked to South Africans about their history, they'd be wondering, how do you know about our history?
You know, I need to give you the applause. Thank you. If Victor wants to become a medical doctor, he needs to step aside and then go get the requisite training, Victor. But as a philosopher, you can do anything. That's why, you know, we are called philosophers. We are called the philosopher king and philosopher. Let me bring in Professor Ochefu. I'm told Professor Wahab is back, but Professor Wahab, please just bear with us for a moment. Let's just bring in Professor Abuki Ochefu. And I really like the conversation that we're having. And we know that majority of our graduates today are struggling to get a job. And that's because most of them, I don't have the correct statistics, but a lot of them have been described as underemployed. There is a skills, mismatch and all of that. But recently, at I think it's a dialogue, program where the Minister of Health attended to have a conversation with the Nigerian Educational and Research Development, Council. He did say that the last time the educational curriculum was reviewed was about 12 years ago, which means 12 years ago, our curriculum, what our curriculum can address is what happened 12 years ago. And we have all, we are all calling for curriculum review. And I'm asking, please, what are the current needs, especially from the part of the employers? What are those current needs now that a review of our curriculum will have to address?
Yeah, just so before I answer that question, let me quickly add that if your colleague wants to go and read medicine, he can actually do so. I have a colleague who read theater arts for her first degree, and somebody made a careless statement that this theater artist, this and that, and it challenged her. She went back to school and qualified as a medical doctor and is a consultant and a professor of medicine today. So the foundational aspect is driven by your by elements, and that's just an aside. Now, we are in the 4th industrial revolution. Some people are even saying we're in the 5th industrial revolution. We are in an environment that we refer to as Education 4.0. The requirements of Education 4.0 in terms of competencies are clearly stated. Your cognitive skills are important. Your people skills are important. Your communication skills are important. Your digital awareness skills are also important. And then the practical skills in any aspect of the society that you want to work in terms of what the 21st century, the 4th industrial revolution provides, then become the next layer of application. So if you are training as an animator, skill sets, and you were taught digital animation by doing, not you of course the theory aspect will be provided, but you are taught and you are examined by the number of animation projects that you bring about, and they will look at the first project that you did to another project that you did maybe after about a 3, 4, 5 months scenario, and then put them together, and that is how you are tested to say that you have achieved a ranking of A, B, C, D, or E, that particular skill set is concerned. How are you able to communicate what you have done to the wider society? You are also tested. what type of logic did you employ in developing your animation story? You are also tested. What type of philosophy, what type of worldview, what type of creativity did you bring into this digital animation project that you are being tested on? The earlier speaker talked about testing. So these are the trends in the new curriculum that is being deployed as far as Education 4.0 is required. And at the level of the Nigerian Universities Commission, all these competencies are being brought to bear in any academic discipline that you go to. So if you are doing history, you are doing English, you are doing medicine.
Professor Abokeche, we do apologize. Well, these are some of the issues we have with technology. And, you know, for those who want to, well, you heard him.
Yes.
He said if you want to become a medical doctor, that's still possible.
I'll
It's
take
about,
it on
but
board.
again, I want to say, just before you continue, Professor Chefu, that there are also medical doctors who have veered into, you know,
Other
journalism,
areas.
broadcasting, and even painting. One of them was on Newsline on last week, Sunday. So it's not journalists going to medical line.
You know,
It's also
I've
vice
seen
versa.
people-
Please continue.
So the practical aspect of these skill sets is what really, if you have the studios and the laboratories and the field work, you know, because part of what you need to do is also to go and test your competency and capacity in the field, in the community that you are going to live and work in. It is that aspect that we have not quite gotten right. But the theoretical and the other application sides, we've worked on it, the curriculum is ready, we are and fourth year, we need to now find resources, we need to find people that will be able to now test and certify that all these things that we require, this student or this graduate or this learner possesses it, and he can now go to society and solve society's problems. Because the knowledge is for development. The knowledge is to move our societies forward. And if we are not able to tidy up that loose end at the end of that training, then we will another generation that will not be able to solve the developmental challenges that we currently face as a nation.
All right, Professor Chefu, thank you very much. I would like to get to Professor Egbewole, who has joined us from Ilorin. Prof, welcome back. Let me ask, as simple as this, how much is a Nigerian certificate, university certificate, NYSC, whatever, how much is it worth in reality?
Thank you so very much. That's putting us on the spot. Our certificate is worth gold, silver, diamond. It is a function of what has gone into it to make the certificate in terms of the position of the institutions, in terms of the learning that has gone into the learner, in terms of the efforts of the facilitators. But if we look at it from the stark reality, we must appreciate the fact that we have challenges with regards to the worth of our certificate. But I am not sure that it is the way to go in terms of analysis or comparison, because we have had our certificates confirmed in various other climes as being one of the, because go to anywhere in Europe, in America, you will find Nigerians, even in the present day graduates that are also doing very, very well, that have been acknowledged as worthy in character and in learning. But we must also be careful and be quick to add that if we do an analysis in terms of numbers, maybe this category of people that has shown that Nigerian certificate is worth the while, 10%, 20%. So that takes us back to the need to look at what happens to the remaining 90%, to the remaining 80%. In clear language, we must know that it is not a function of our institutions. It's a systemic problem, and this problem we must address. That's the point I was making before the connection had issues. That we are looking at the problem from the perspective of the result and not the cause. So for me, to be able to come to the position of the real worth of our certificate, we must back to the basics of identifying the root causes of why we are where we are, and that can only be done if we do not do isolate education from the society. Thank you.
All right, I thank you, Professor Egbewale. Thank you very much. Of course, Professor Egbewale is a senior advocate of Nigeria. We should just also indicate that. But let's come back to the studio. And Dr. Hayab, I'm just wondering, again, we must credit the NYSC, for being able to identify, to discover, the 101 students who had forged their certificates. And we understand that those students, graduated from University of Calabar. So is it that our institutions are now, selling out? I mean, why do we have this kind of a certificate forgery now rampant?
Certificate forgery, like the last speaker said, is a function of the system. In a system where the quest for money, the quick money syndrome, it gives room for people to think we can do this and get away. And for those young people to forge their certificates, there must have been a past of some who have forged their certificates and got away with it.
Precisely.
When the this current democratic dispensation started, I think one of the most interesting things was the question of the Toronto certification by the then Speaker of the House of Reps, Buhari, from Kano. And during the cleanup exercise that is credited to Obasanjo's era, whatever other feelings one may have, we were able to fish out Buhari, and then he was no longer a member of the Reps, and then he went home. Now, if we had continued with that, this forged certification would have reduced. The other thing is, I was saying this outside the studio before I walked in, that we don't even have a system, a very reliable system of verification. Now, one person can have 3, 4, 5 dates of birth, because we don't have a system that once you are born on the 11th of May, 1975, you cannot change your date of birth. So we need to move with the times. I watch football, and when we see a footballer from Europe and they say this person is 20 years, people argue that he must have changed his age. I used to tell them it only happens here. It doesn't happen anywhere else. That person would have been born in the hospital, and his age would have been digitalized, and forever you cannot change your date of birth. So now we already have NIN in Nigeria. We have BVN, and it's working. If you have one BVN, it goes to all your accounts. Why not we do this maybe from the primary school? Because as we're talking, I'm happy that most of the speakers on the program are university lecturers, but the problem starts from the cradle, from the primary. So once we have this data put into the system, you cannot come overnight and forge a certificate. How do you forge a certificate that is supposed to have a seal? And then you walk, for me, maybe because I was raised from a family that I'll be afraid. I can't even carry a forged anything. Because I'll be thinking the next person will identify and be able to know that it's a forged certificate. Anyone who carries a forged certificate is a very serious person. I mean, serious in the negative. Because the level of seriousness with which we put to forge certificates, if we had put in that same level of seriousness, those people are capable, I'm very sure, of studying and earning the certificates which they want to forge. But we want things easy. Now that also takes us to what I've said, that we were raised in a society where we had this belief that I can get away with anything. No, we should get to a system where that kind of Danielic spirit of excellence, where Daniel, in the scriptures, Daniel chapter 1 verse 8 says, Daniel purposed in his heart. It is the purpose. We're not purpose. That is why you can sit and be thinking how you're going to forge certificate. University lecturers, some of them are bait cheating in exams. Some of them actually will work with people in the admin to get a certificate. You give somebody a certificate, now it brings us, why were they identified? Maybe they didn't, I didn't read the news.
Yes, sorry, I needed to clarify because my
yes.
attention has just been drawn that the NYSC withdrew and invalidated certificates of 99 students who allegedly were illegally mobilized for national service during those years, 2021, 2022, and 2023, and 2 others illegally granted exemption certificates. So we really don't know whether the reason...
Whether, yes.
Yes.
So
yes,
maybe they had graduated earlier and then were not mobilized. Maybe they didn't meet the requisite skill because there's a certain number of credits you have to earn before you can have a waiver.
Basically, the requirements for being mobilized.
So you have to have a student who is earning a BA should be able to score up to 118 credits. Then you can waive the 2 credits. And the 2 credits that is waived in those days that I knew would not be a core subject, because there are subjects we take that are core, there are subjects we take as electives. But we have left all this. So I want to congratulate the NYSC for doing this, and then I want to urge them to continue.
Yes, and I think this falls at the doorstep of the universities.
Yes.
And maybe Professor Gbewale, can weigh in here, to probably make us understand how that can happen.
Yes.
Professor Gbewale, please.
Sorry, I'm joining late because
the Vice Chancellor of University of Ilorin, when we do return to him, he'll be able to give us insight into how this... Professor Gbewale, thank you. We were just wondering how possible, it is for students to be illegally mobilized for national service or even illegally granted exemption certificates without the knowledge of the institutions. Is that possible?
It is possible without the knowledge or
well, I would have loved the Vice Chancellor to really give us, an insight. But Professor Chefu, you are also the, SecGen of the, Association of Chancellors of Nigerian Universities. Please give us an insight how possible this can be.
Very much. In addition to all that, I'm also an alumnus of University of Calabar and the national president of the University of Calabar Alumni Association. So you can imagine how embarrassed we were as alumnus of the university when that story broke. But what the story in the press is not saying is the fact that it was the university that informed NYSC that 178 students have been put on their portal purportedly to have graduated from the University of Calabar that are not graduates. So it was the university that actually drew the attention of NYC before NYC took the action that they did. And the university is saying that you are only identifying 90-something students, while we mentioned that there are 180-something that were mobilized. And it was the University of Calabar authorities that also alerted the ICPC to investigate that there's a syndicate that is going on working within the University of Calabar, within the NYC and their network that are hacking, mobilizing people illegally. So it was that drive actually came from University of Calabar. They were the
and signals.
Well, we keep apologizing. I mean, we're sorry about the disconnect. Yes, Dr. Herb, you want to weigh in on?
With
okay, sorry. We understand that the connection is back.
With the information that we now have, we are proud of University of Calabar for identifying this malpractice. The fact that people within the system can work to create certificates or forge certificates in these cases and connect with people maybe in the NYC to get these people mobilized is a clear confirmation of what the son, the VC of the University of Ilorin, had said, that it is a systemic problem. So we cannot single out what is happening in the education subsector from the entire Nigerian system. Nobody should do this to a system that trains people to go out there and impact society. Just imagine, we don't know the identities of these graduates or who forged their certificates. What if some of them actually trained in nursing, or maybe got forged certificates for nursing? What if some of them got forged certificates for MBBS, and then they are going to work in hospitals or even in the lab? Now, this is very dangerous because they would just kill people. So it's not just what you get into your pocket that should worry people. All of us as Nigerians should be interested in building a system that we can trust. Sometimes you read in the social media where a story is told of someone who trained a pilot who didn't train well, and then they were to fly, and then the pilot announced that he was the one to fly. Nobody will sit in that kind of flight and be confident. So as a teacher, as a school administrator, as a person in this country, we should be interested in solving this problem where certificate racketeering is becoming a very serious concern. Where I worked before, we had someone whom actually was employed in that institution to teach. And this person came with a certificate from somewhere that could not be traced. The person who interviewed him said that when he asked him the most basic question in the field that he claimed to be qualified or to be certified for, he could not answer. And he said to the leader of that place, please, I do not trust this person's certificate. But somehow the person got employed because he comes from a particular place that was designated to come. Now that takes us back to the question of excellence. If excellence were to be the mark on the day of that interview, definitely that person would not have been taken, not to talk about realizing that the person had actually forged his certificate. And years later, this person was involved in certificates racketeering where he worked, because the system that produces me is the system that I will sell. So if I'm a product of excellence, what do you expect? I will transfer excellence. But if I'm a product of compromise, what do you expect from me? Definitely I will preach compromise and represent it. So we have to get to the point where we realize that we cannot rise above the standard of the education that we offer our citizens. Once we compromise our education system, then we cannot expect development to come. It cannot come as a wishful thinking. It has to be deliberate.
All right, Dr. Ayab, thank you. Let's quickly take a short break. When we come back, hopefully the connections to Ilorin and, of course, Professor Ochefu would have been better.
My vision for our country is one of a just and prosperous nation where each person may enjoy the peace, freedom, and meaningful livelihood that only democratic good governance can provide. One that is open, transparent, and accountable to the Nigerian people.
Can you smell the 5 million naira?
Yeah. We can.
Can you smell the 5 million naira? Yeah. Name something that might be a deal breaker for you in a romantic relationship.
Trust.
Cheating.
I would say small d.
Mommy, are you shy?
It's can't see. We are coping.
Oluwa Seun.
No pressure.
Pressure to what?
No pressure. No pressure.
2 strikes.
No pressure.
Name a way most people get over their ex.
Crying.
Crying. So they says.
Imagine a world where your potential isn't limited by your bank account, where your financial dreams can become reality. That world is here with the Nigerian Consumer Credit Corporation scheme, Credico. Credico is one of President Tinubu's initiatives designed to put the power of consumer credit in the hands of working Nigerians. Here to help you achieve your goals, whether it's providing for your family or expanding your home or business. Visit www.credico.ng today for details. This is the renewed hope.
The federal government of Nigeria wants vandals of national assets, electricity transmission towers, cables, and other facilities to desist from this act of sabotage. Vandalism is a serious crime punishable under the law. Vandalizing electrical equipment will affect millions of Nigerians, including your loved ones. Remember that national assets belong to all of us, hence the need to protect them. Report all cases of suspicious movement around electrical facilities to security agencies. When you see something, say something. This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and National Orientation in collaboration with the National Counter-Terrorism Center, NCTC, Office of the National Security Advisor.
All right, thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria, where we have been discussing the certificate conundrum and with academics both in the studio and out of it. And I've just been told that another one we earlier introduced has just joined us, and I'm introducing Professor Hakeem Ibikunle Tijani, a visiting professor at the National Open University of Nigeria and a professor of history and the executive director of the Office of Global Partnerships Africa at Morgan State University. Professor Tijani, it's a pleasure to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be invited to join this conversation.
So let's get you going straight up. We've been talking about, the crisis between certificates and then qualification, having the skills to deliver the job versus certificates, which has led a lot of people to illegally attempt to get certificates so that they can just present and get particular jobs. What's your take on this? How do you think that we could get out of this?
I think first and foremost, ab initio, forged certificates for any purpose is unlawful, and it is an act. So we cannot give different narratives, whether it is the fault of UNICAR or the fault of NYSC or the fault of WAEC or officials at the universities or College of Education or Polytechnics. In this case, University of Calabar. And to say that just one alone is totally unacceptable. it is a terrible indication of a rotten system in an era of pursuit of centers of excellence. There's a breakdown of synergy. There's a breakdown of collaboration. There's a breakdown of inclusiveness that requires a deep cleansing. I think first and foremost, the rebranding or the reorientation of the psyches of not just the university lecturers, but also staff, not just NYSC, not just the ministry, but every one of us, even from our home front. I can't imagine the audacity for anyone to now forge, even if you did not go for the NYSC program, which is a very laudable attempt on the part of the Nigerian government to really bring us together as Nigerians. So listening to this is actually troublesome. For me, I couldn't believe it. And that is why I chose to wake up at my current location. It is too early, but it is not too early to engage in this discussion. I think one of the solutions will be for us to revalue, to overhaul rather, the system, to ensure that there is that synergy and there is that genuity for the prospect of this nation, Nigeria. I think we're lacking that. There's a need for better vetting system. We talk about automation. We talk about portal system. You see, somebody must have aided either one. I don't want to talk about 101, 101. That is so, it's not good for Nigeria. It's not good for any community. It's not good for any nation. It really kills attempts to showcase the giant of Africa. I remember discovering one in my current disposition at Morgan State University. Imagine a lecturer. I believe the guy was also from Calabar. He's already a lecturer. But guess what? Because I vetted, despite the fact that they were supposed to come as lecturers to continue their PhD, and I said, no, this can't be true. As a deputy vice chancellor at Adeleke University then, we discovered also, not one, not two, at the point of interview, because we have to vet, you have to ask questions. If you claim you finish your primary school at the age of 4, something is wrong. So it is just for us to have a step back and forget about the clientele system that we embrace. Oh, it's because it's my cousin, it's the whatever of the founder, it's the whatever of the minister. We cannot continue to have this. And a global system, institutions that are aiming for global recognition cannot engage in this. It's a deep, deep, rotten system and a waste of public funds. Even for NYC to be withdrawing at this point, or University of Calabar claiming that, oh, we identify it first. They spent 3 years. They spent 4 years minimum. None of them spent a year. So what happened at the point of vetting when you claim you've passed JAM or you are coming in as a direct entry? So you can see how it is important for us to have a deep overhaul of how we work, how we relate as agencies of government. It is really embarrassing, and I will pause for now. Thank you very much.
Professor Tijani, I'll still remain with you for a little longer. That's because I want you to share your perspectives with us, because we are pointing fingers now at the institutions and parents and the students themselves. But what is the role of employers of labor, and of course institutions like JAM, Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, and also of the NUC? Are they complicit in all of this?
Very much. I don't think NUC is complicit. I don't think. I think the issue starts from the home front. It starts from the home front. If you lack integrity within the family, if you lack integrity within the community, definitely it will translate in what you do, in your upbringing. I think the basis is the fact that we go through elementary school or primary school. We all go through secondary school. Some of us did advanced level, okay? So you see that this issue of forgery, this lack of integrity has always been part and parcel of that individual or collectively. So we cannot just now say it's NUC. NUC has nothing to do with due respect, with all of this insanity that has become part of our history, which is unfortunate. At the point of the employer, even before you get to the employer, you must have gone through some level of education. It is at that point that we should have noted that, oh, I have an issue, this person is not qualified. Go back. The system allows you to have 2 sittings, as we say during our time. And I still believe they do allow it as at today. At the point of gaining admission into a polytechnic, into a college of education, into the university, there's vetting. At the point of admission, there is vetting by the registrar's office, as well as the department and the faculty. You go through the process. So in the age of automation, the university portal, we're supposed to have, and I believe, if not all, the institution do have a vetting system, automated system, somebody to review again. But I think one of my colleagues in the studio said something about credential vetting. I think that is at the point where this insanity, for lack of better adjective, insanity, lack of integrity comes in. There's that compromise because of whatever is there for the boys. It's none of my business. It is our business because this is a bad news for Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Victor, I know you have questions.
Of course, he's already made mention of the earlier points that Dr. Hayab made here in the studio. And I'm wondering, could we reverse the trend? Say, for instance, you want to hire an engineer for a particular purpose. You say, okay, if you don't say you want an engineer, can you do
with
this
first class
and this? No, can you do this and this and this and this and that? Come.
Yes.
But I also sense, that when you come, then we now say, okay, what certificates do you have? But I also sense that if you do that as an employer of labor, you may not be able to handle the crowd. So it comes to a system of even asking, okay, who's going to do this
yes,
job?
But
can we reverse it?
Yes.
Go with skills first and then ask for certificates later.
Competence. Can we reverse and put emphasis more on competence rather than on certification?
Yes. I work sometimes as a consultant for foundational literacy, teacher development training. Most of the international development partners that have hired me for simply reading my profile of what I can do. So let's say the British Council, they require just 2 pages of curriculum vitae, 2 pages, not 4, not 3, not 4. And the first aspect is your name, the second is your profile of what you can do. So you'd see Philip Hayab is a teacher educator with maybe 18 years experience. I can train
they ask
teachers.
your motivation.
Yes.
It comes
Then
in this format.
sometimes they ask you to write a cover letter. Sometimes, and this cover letters is not about I have these qualifications. You are going to demonstrate the skills that you claim you have there. So they will select the hiring. The HR, the hiring team, will select from whatever motivation that fits the skills that they require. And on the day of the interview, whether it is via Zoom or it is physical, They will not talk about your certificate. It is about you proving these very claims that you've made. So if you say you can train teachers, you have to name
The ones you've trained.
The ones you've trained. I'm sure one of the speakers on the program has said that okay, if you train in 2000, I think it's Ochefo, he was talking about if you train in 2003, let's say if you do a work in March and in June, you should have improved on that. You don't continue to have the same thing. So it is possible that we change this narrative. I like it when I see first class. I like it when I see second class upper. But I am concerned about people being able to prove their skills. As an undergraduate student, we had students in our class who could actually memorize a whole passage. And once you ask them in exams, they reproduce it. We should stop that kind of exams. There is no way I'll ask you to define. Definition has never changed any country. Agri can be defined as this, but it's not applicable. It's not. We want application. At the level of the university, you shouldn't be doing definition of terms. For what? You can do definition of terms when you're writing a dissertation. You should be asked question, if this were to be this and this were to be this, what would you do? So people, if you have 100 people writing the same exams, you have 100 ideas. They may be similar. But when we talk, we ask people to define. They define, and at the end of the day, they cannot contribute to the system. So we need to change our perspective. The issue of the curriculum, the issue of what we want these people to come and do should be the concern. As an undergraduate student in 100 level, I went to do field work in the High Ndogo in Zaria, which is very close to the university. We went to Bomo because whenever you mention a particular aspect of a culture that was practiced, your professor will give you a task to go to that community and write your report. It is this report that will show you when there, how did you even relate with the people? And it captures those 4.0 points that Professor Chefu was referring to. One of the other things I want to mention with regards to skills is that when I started applying for schools abroad, when I applied to the University of Leeds, the first thing I was asked to do is to send one chapter of my undergraduate dissertation. From this one chapter, they'll be able to measure whether I have the capability to even reason in the field that I'm claiming that I want to study for a master's degree. But for the universities I applied in Nigeria, all they asked me was to present my certificate and my transcript. Now, this can be doctored. The certificate can be doctored. A transcript can be doctored. But when you write a chapter, you write out a chapter of what you've done. In most cases, they would have a way of verifying. Now we have digitalization of media. So we should move from where we were. This is 21st century. Let's go there.
Thank you. Professor Chefu, how can we change the mindset and I don't know, maybe minimize this certificate racketeering in higher institutions?
2 minutes.
Of call will be the miracle centers that generate results for people who have finished secondary school. We have too many of them. The various state ministries of education are fighting to reduce them. To let, like the previous speaker said, it is coming from the family. You know, as a parent, that this school facilitates cheating to get WAEC results that enable you to progress to the next level. You know, my family runs a community school in our village, and students will get to SS2 and leave to go to a miracle center in the same village, because they will say that in that place, they will help you get 8 credits or more. But in our own school, we don't allow that to happen. So they go and pay and get results. So we should address the issue of miracle centers that facilitate this fraudulent entry into the system. And then we should improve on the technology that does verification of credentials. We have micro credentials, mini credentials, and major credentials. There should be an aggregation portal that does that verification, just like it says. We now have NEEM and we have BVN, we should have a similar structure and platform for certification so that continuous filtering of the system takes place as you move from place to place. And then finally, we should have a system whereby, having fact-checked your credentials, your skill sets will now be demonstrated by your capacity to deliver on the job that has been specified for you in a practical, demonstrable manner, with assessment that is based on very clear timelines, very clear instructions that will bring out what you can do, how you can add value, how you can impact on society in the field that you have chosen. That would be my own take.
Professor Chefu, thank you very much for that take. Let's quickly get to Professor Wahab Egbewole in Ilorin. Akeem, okay, we've lost him again.
Tijani.
Okay, Professor Akeem, Professor Tijani, rather, let's give you the last about 2 minutes that we have to say what should be the deterrent. You've talked about the failure of a vetting system. There's always one bad apple somewhere. There's always one bad apple, and that's why you build this. That's how you build a syndicate from, maybe NYSC, perhaps from JAM, perhaps just one person each builds a syndicate. What should be the deterrent for such behaviors that end up soiling the university education system?
Thank you very much. I think I was going to continue by saying that history is about where, how, when, and we should be finding solution to this rotten situation. And the question I wanted to ask us, panelists, is what did the NY do? Is reported to the police. As the police taking action, when Carl got to know, what did they do? Have they been prosecuted? You see, in the past, some people, even at a very high level, were identified to have forged certificates. Okay? What happened to them? What are the consequences? So we have to ask these critical questions and be able to find solution to it. There must be a deterrent. There's none for now. Corporates are mentioned. We sensitize the news. We come to panel like this, and then tomorrow we forgot about it. There are no consequences. And that is why all of this will continue. There are still some that are with forged certificates all over. Of course, Nigeria is not the only nation that is going through most.
All right, Professor Tijani, I'm sorry, apart from the failure of the network, the signal, we've also run out completely of time. But we'd like to thank you, Professor Hakeem Ibikunle Tijani, a visiting professor at the National Open University of Nigeria and professor of history. He's also executive director of the Office of Global Partnerships, Africa, at Morgan State University. It's been a pleasure having you, even if it's for a short while. Thank you very much for your contributions. Let's also thank quickly Professor Yakubu Aboki Ochefu, Secretary General, Committee of Vice Chancellors of Nigerian Universities, and Secretary General, Committee of Pro-Chancellors of Nigerian Federal Universities. Thank you very much for your input this morning. And let's quickly thank, even though we've lost him, Professor Wahab Egbewole, who is Vice Chancellor at the University of Ilorin. We thank you very much for your contributions on the program. And finally, but by no means the least, here in the studio, Dr. Philip John Hayab, an educationist. We thank you very much for your time and thoughts on Good Morning Nigeria.
All right, and so that does it for us today again on the program, and we look forward to having you tomorrow, Friday, when we say, as always, Thank God it's Friday. From me, Claire Adelabo Abdulrazak, and the Good Morning Nigeria crew, have a pleasant day.
And from me, Victor Azu, be safe and enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you tomorrow.